Welcome, everyone. Happy Wednesday. I see the sun is shining, and I hope that you all get to go outside and enjoy it for a little bit today. Because I don't know about you, but I'm pretty tired of winter. So I feel like sun is where I'm at. And for those lucky people that are somewhere sunny, oh, too bad for you. Anyway, thank you to the province of Alberta for supporting job seekers. Without them, all these programs that we've been offering would not be possible. And I'd also like to thank Brian from Compound XP, who is our technology provider and support. He creates all the magic that happens behind the scene. And the fabulous talent pool team, especially Brandon and Chris, who make these events happen. So I want to remind you that we have all of the previous recordings on our YouTube channel. So if you want to check them out, I think they're valid today as they were when we presented them 2 years ago. I think we've started doing these. There will be a post event survey, so I want you to keep your eye out. There will be a link in the question um, piece, and those who complete it can maybe win a gift card. So, another little tidbit, we have created a resource list that you can access with different material that might be helpful with you in your job search. The link will be in the post event survey. So, we'll be taking questions throughout this session. We want it to be more interactive, and we really want to meet your need and answer those questions that maybe you've got and you've not had a chance to ask someone in person. So there is a question and answer feature. We will get your questions. You won't see them on screen, but that's okay. I'll be able to ask our great panel the questions that you present. And questions. I have so many. So we have some really familiar faces with us today. So I'm going to start with Debbie. She's a career coach and talent acquisition professional and a registered professional recruiter. She was just announced as one of the top recruiters in Canada in this year, 2022. So congratulations, Debbie. I remember sitting in a coffee shop with Debbie back in, I think it was 2015, maybe. She'd just been laid off from her job. And if any of you have had that devastating experience, it can be very painful. We discussed self employment as an option for her. And I'm not saying I had any influence. I'm not saying that. But I just want to say Debbie is now a very successful entrepreneur, and she has employed many talented human resource professionals since then, and she's making a difference in the world. There's a reason they're saying things like, the silver lining in the cloud, or, when a door closes, a window opens. Really, it's just a reminder for all of us when we're struggling that there is something better that will come. So back to Debbie. She is a certified laugh yoga leader. She enjoys spending time with her boys, Jake, a golden retriever, and Batman the bulldog. And she is a member of Toastmasters, and she's won numerous awards, including first place in the area humorous speech contest. So we shall see, I'm sure, a bit of that today. And next we have Pat, who describes herself as a project manager. She's a labor market geek. She's a mom. She's a mom with all boys. I think you live with all boys in the house. So she's extremely adaptable and very resilient, I have to believe. She's a sports enthusiast. She believes Canada can have a thriving economy with its environmentally responsible energy. And I love labor market geek, as a labor market is one of those things that most people shy away from. And so we need people that geek out on it because it's so important for job seekers to have that. And the next person is Lindsay. And I love Googling people. And I discovered that Lindsay was married in 2021. And why is that interesting? Because she had a name change and I couldn't find her on LinkedIn because I was looking for her maiden name. So, part of your job search is being a detective, and we all need to improve our research skills. Lindsay is an HR professional with many years' experience. You can glean information from about a person from their LinkedIn page. If you look at Lindsay's work history, she's progressed in her career and she's been increasing her skills and keeping up to date by education. So Lindsay is a fan of Ryan Reynolds. Like, who isn't this day? You know, he's funny. He's a Canadian. I follow him on Instagram. And the other Canadian she's following is Arlene Dickinson, who is a powerhouse businesswoman who happens to be from Calgary. So once again, LinkedIn's a great place to get some information. Now, I have no information on Hiloko simply because she is standing in last minute, which tells me she is flexible. She is very, very adaptable. And so I'm going to ask her to give us a few little tidbits about herself to share so that we have a little bit of background, a little bit of personality. I do know she's from Japan, and we did talk about that a little bit. And so I'm going to ask you, Hiloko, if you would mind sharing.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. My name is Hiroko Nakao, and my background is a social worker here in Alberta, and I'm working for nonprofit organization called Momentum Community Economic Development Society in Calgary. We standing here over 30 years, and we provide um, a trades training program and also local economy development. So we support people who launch businesses, and mainly we work with the people who are living on low incomes. So our organizational goal is to reduce poverty through our specific expertise. And I'm overseeing the department is called Financial Empowerment Department, and I'm managing around 15 programs.
Yes.
And my colleague Margaret provided the asset workshops last year, and unfortunately, she won't be able to hear with you today. So I'm stepping in on behalf of her. And maybe tidbits about myself as a personal kind of background. So I'm originally from Japan about over 20 years ago, and I'm extremely passionate about financial empowerment because I was going through the same journey as people who struggle ends meet and also navigating this complex system here in Canada,
Mm,
like a credits and financial system,
right.
banking system, and all of that. And on top of that is consumerism. So I'm happy to be here and have answer all your questions as much as I can, and we might be able to discuss a little bit about how we can navigate this difficult time as we experiencing quite a high inflation. So thank you so much. Back to
Thank
you,
you.
Lynn.
Thank you. I think everybody needs to check out their website because the programs you offer are crazy, you know, because you have programs for young people, you have programs for older people. So, saving programs. Anyway, enough said. Check it out. Use your research skills I just mentioned. Okay, so let's get this party started. I would like to ask each of you, what is one piece of advice from your experience that our participants would benefit from? So may I start with Lindsay because you're on my this side.
Absolutely. So are you talking about in like a job seeking bid?
Sure,
My
sure.
favorite piece of advice to always give is interviews are terrifying. For those of you who haven't done a lot of them before, they're stressful and being put on the spot about yourself can be intimidating. Come into the interview with three good things that you can offer a company no matter what, and make sure that you work it into that interview. Things that you're very proud of, things that were a huge success. But don't forget about that one thing that perhaps you weren't so good at, because you know you're always going to be asked that. And I find that in interviewing processes, that is something that people get stuck on quite a bit. The what can you improve on, or where was a time where you made a mistake? To say, "Oh, well, I've
Mhm.
never made a mistake," is not a good answer. Talk about the mistake you made and then how you learned from it for sure.
Thank you. That's great advice. You're right. It's always hard for us to own up to doing something like that because we don't think an employer wants to hear it, but you're telling me they do. Because we all want to know, what did you learn from it? You always end with the positive. Okay. Okay. Hiloko?
Yeah. Sorry, could you just repeat the question again for me?
Yes. What is one piece of advice that you would have our participants to hear?
Yeah, so I'm coming from financial empowerment and maybe employment. It's not quite jibe, but personal, like it kind of juggling personal finance require a lot of different skills. And we can hopefully talk a little bit more about life skills, but also like a sense of self. It's a part of the asset module that we delivered and shared. And there some like kind of articles talks about more engaging with how you manage money, and that also leads to how you manage your life. And we wanted to kind of hoping that to strengthening our internal kind of core strengthening about how we see our money, but also how we see our life. And then that might lead to how you see your job seeking skills and what sort of job that you wanted to land it on. So I wanted to kind of advise you that looking at our courses, it's very holistic. It's not about only counting numbers, but to build your confidence and also makes informed decisions. Those kind of things that also picking out through the day-to-day transactions and pay attention to your personal finance. It's a lots of decision making, executive decision making that we are doing every single day. So why don't you transfer that knowledge to interview skills, how I make decisions, how I seek and research, and all sorts of component that you will kind of imbalanced and make most applicable and effective decisions for any given time. So hopefully we can kind of discuss that as well. Back to you.
Thank you. And, I mean, that is something for us to remember that when we're talking about looking for work, it is all part of our greater life, and our finances impact that just as our work impacts our finances. So, I really love the idea that we are looking at this holistically rather than each of you bring different skills to the game and different information. So, thank you. Okay, Pat.
You bet. I one of the things that have really noticed in certainly in 2023 is the number of in-person hiring events, job fairs that are occurring compared to that was just totally shut down during
Yeah.
the pandemic. And so I think, and I have to say, I've tried to attend some of these. The lineups are huge, and so I think people really want to think about once they get in there, how are they going to manage the fact that there's lots of people, there's lots of employers, so that it really they're having it's a effective activity, job search activity for themselves, as well as really making a good connection with employers. So one of the things that I got to admit I'm stealing this tip, but I thought it was a really good one, where find out what employers are going to be at the job fair, and pick those 3, 4, 5 that you really think you're the best match for in terms of the skills and the qualifications and experience you bring to the table, and do your market research. Know those employers really well. Back to what Lindsay, said, leveraging what Lindsay said. What are those 3 things that you want to leave that employer with in terms of their the impression that you can leave for them and what you can do for them, because employers are there to make those impactful connections as well. And then make sure that you're focusing on connecting with those targeted employers, as opposed to just wandering around and seeing
Yes.
who you might be able to give your resume to. Really have to think about, you know, if you come away with having really good conversations with, 3, 4, 5 employers, you're winning when you're going to those job fairs. So just some thoughts and tips for consideration.
Oh, that's excellent, Pat. Thank you. And before I move to Debbie, I just want to say that Debbie told me a story years ago, not just me, a whole crowd of people, um, that when she worked for an oil and gas company, people would just come and give their resumes to them. But if someone actually came and could talk about the actual company and what they were doing, maybe talking about some of their projects, they would put a K on those resumes, and that would be the keep pile. And the rest of the resumes would go into that circular filing system, which was the garbage can. And I'm sure they shredded them before they went in. But the whole idea is you want to make an impact. So thank you, Pat. That is so important. Debbie, your turn.
The Lynn, when you tell that story and you remind me of it, I still remember the guy that took notes. I was presenting at that uh, event as well, and he took notes. And then there was one guy in particular who came up. Anyways, we ended up hiring him at Devon, and Canadian Natural bought all of Devon's assets. And that guy is still there. He's still
Oh,
there.
wow.
And that was like, what? That's got to be like 15 years ago or 10 years ago.
Yes.
So, but I did want to, I wanted to touch on something too that Lindsay had said that just really resonated with me because it just happened this week. So we have a candidate in interviewing on a role, and the guy was a shoe-in because someone at the company had worked with him and vouched that he's a great guy. It was a senior technical role, so he had all the qualifications they were looking for. And he's in high demand because he has another offer on the table right now. But we were pretty confident he wants to work at this company. And he gets in the interview, and one of the questions they were asking Lindsay was, if in your previous position, what would your boss say was what your strengths? And then they asked what would they say is your weakness? And he laughed it off and made a joke of, and he was like, I there's nothing. And yeah, he didn't get it. He did not get the job.
Wow.
So yeah, so I've seen it at every level, and so that really resonated with me. But when we're talking, if I was to share right now what I'm feeling is my best piece of advice for job seekers would be to try lots of different approaches. And I'm speaking to this from a recruiter standpoint. If I look at all the jobs that we've filled in the last month and go through each one, we have found each candidate a different way. And
Wow.
so what that looks like for job seekers is the same. And that's why it's so frustrating for job seekers, because they want the one answer. Oh, put a nice profile up on LinkedIn and a recruiter will find you. Well, in reality, like, it may happen for one person that way, but it may not happen for other 99. So having this multi roads and paths that you're going through to find work is really, in my opinion, the key. So you're doing your searches on Indeed, you're having your net going to your like Pat said, those career fairs live. You're out there networking. You're doing all these things to increase your chances of finding your next dream position.
Oh, excellent. And that leads beautifully into my next question for everyone about the value of networking. So how do you feel about networking? How do you feel about people reaching out to you on LinkedIn or getting in touch to have informational interviews. And if you don't know what an informational interview is, job seekers out there, that's where you meet with someone not to get a job, but to gain information about either the company or about the actual career or maybe about the whole sector. So it's not like, can you get me a job? It's like, can you share your information with me so that I gain more knowledge about the field? So, Pat, maybe I could start with you. How do you feel about networking?
Yeah, again, I think it is the to Debbie's point too, the broader your network is, the bigger, better chance you have of connecting with somebody who can make that connection for you. But I think what you said, Lynn, was so important. It's about how you approach networking and not just be about, again, here's who I am, and this is the job I'm looking for. It's what do you need to know perhaps about what's happening in an industry, what's happening in particular company, and the kinds of projects they're working on. It really is. I think market research is so important, obviously, as a labor market, geek. But I think see networking as exactly that information opportunity to do more market research and gain more information so that when you start to have those employment talks or those job talks, you're coming from a very informed place as opposed to, trying to sell yourself for a job opportunity that's really based on a lot of assumptions as opposed to, really solid information. So again, it's about how you're using networking, and it's not just about, again, this is the kind of job I'm looking for. It's information gathering.
May I back up a moment because I just realized I'm throwing around the term labor market information and you mentioned it. Could you define that in case there are people out there who don't understand what we're talking about?
Sure. I mean, it is just really research and understanding what's happening, within the job market, in terms of where's the demand, what kind of jobs are in demand, what kinds of skill sets employers are looking for. And then, I do it so that I look at what are the jobs and what's the supply and where are the gaps, where's the opportunities, that kind of stuff. But as an individual job seeker, it's about understanding what's happening within the industry or industries you may be interested in going into, and understanding what might be some leading indicators of the kinds of skills required or the kinds of activity that's going to happen. So, a lot of my work is in the energy sector. And so, I pay attention and I recommend anybody looking for work perhaps in a particular sector, understand what are the projects that are happening? How will that translate into jobs? Where are those jobs going to be? Are there particular regulations that are happening that may be a catalyst for certain kinds of jobs or skill sets required? We just came off a federal budget where they're putting a lot of incentive into clean tech. So, what does that mean for, Canada, Alberta's clean tech sector? Where is that going to translate into jobs? So, thanks for the question, Lynn, because I take it for granted in terms of what that thought process is around doing labor market research and what it means for me as a consultant versus what it might mean for a specific job seeker could
Right.
be different.
Thank you. Thank you. Lindsay, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Sure. When it comes to networking, so important. And I think what people forget with networking is it's not about always like the networking events. going to job fairs, going to companies. It's about being stuck in an elevator with someone for 5 floors and finding out where they work. Maybe it's a company you've never heard of, but it's in a sector that you're interested in. Airplanes, I find, are unreal when you're chatting with people if they're willing to chat. I guess my one piece of advice when networking on something like a LinkedIn, there is a very fine line between networking and I don't want to say harassing, but overthrowing yourself out there and relying on one person. In the event that you've chatted with one person, if you reached out and they haven't reached back, maybe move on. Poke once, poke twice, but then move on. And that's why that large net of people, I think, is so important. Way back in my career, I was actually laid off as well. It was devastating, Debbie. I feel the pain there. But what was lovely about it is they offered us like career counseling. And one of the first things that they said was get your network up. If you're in line at a Tim Hortons and the person in front of you is in a nice suit or something, and you're like, oh, they must do something interesting, comment on the suit, take it from there. It's a 5-minute conversation that is networking. Making yourself personalized business cards, I've actually found is something that holds people above a little bit. It doesn't have to be like for your business cards, but for yourself. This is me. This is my LinkedIn. If you have like a business Instagram page, putting it on there with like a fun fact or something about you on the back. I've seen it a couple times and it really does help stand out and people want to reach out to that person.
Thank you. Oh, that's a great idea. Okay, last but not least, Loco, do you have any advice? Because obviously, in your world, networking is part of what you do.
Yeah, thank you. Just so fascinating to hear about the networking in a context of employment job seeking. It's interesting enough, like our sort of like a financial empowerment, um, and especially with momentum, we use this asset mapping. So we looking at the finance as an asset, but also connection is an asset. So, like I'm also accredited financial counselor in Canada as well, and I have done lots of financial coaching. And employment status coming up in the conversation. Never mind finance, like personal finance. And we do see connection is a huge asset in our life and inventory and just to stop and have a look and what sort of like a connection you have. So it could be a friend or could be acquaintances, and then thoroughly and meaningfully you are connected to so many different type of people, and then you never really know who's going to bring you employment opportunities. And we always talks about why don't you start really looking at who is in your life, and then those people may connect it with different places.
Right.
And we might talk about kind of personal asset, which means sense of self. So personal quality touched on could be a communication skills, or you're a confident person, or a positive person. So those are also influence how you expand your
Right.
meaningful network that may bring you a different opportunities. So I love Lindsay, you talking about, in the elevator, stuck in the elevator, that's all opportunities. And then your own personal quality will come through to connect with different people. So we definitely looking into growing our connections to bring different asset, different opportunities in our life that may influence financial asset as well, which also coming through employment, huge employment. So now we are working with the government of Alberta to sort of like like we have already integrated and system integration happened, money management for uh, sort of income support earners and also job seekers. So we are creating some presentation for Alberta government staff how this asset model can translate into job seeking activities. So connection network is absolute connection to, or like a kind of intersection to what we hope to achieve as well for our participant.
Thank you. That is so important, what you're saying, because so often our clients will say, say I'm new to Canada or I'm new to the sector and I have no network. How do I build a network? But as you say, everyone you know or people you meet can all be part of your network. I remember a young woman coming to me when I was organizing the Human Rights Forum for Global Fest. In the break, she came to me and she said, I want to volunteer. I don't know what I want to do, but I want to volunteer. I'm really interested in this. And from there, she was able to be part of a program. She was able to then get a job, and now she's actually gone back to school to become a lawyer because she was a lawyer in her home country. And I always think it just takes a little bit of courage to do that. Okay, so next question. Anyone can answer this. I understand people want to work from home and employers want you to work from the office. So actually, I'll start with Debbie because you just had a very good insight, Debbie, okay?
Yeah, it's interesting. We were talking about a article I recently read, and it was on how many people want to work from home versus how many jobs are offering that work from home or hybrid model. I don't have the numbers, but it was shocking that it was, I think it was like over 80% of people are looking for that work from home or hybrid model, and it's just a small percentage of companies that are offering that. What we've seen is we've been for the last few years we've been telling everybody to get themselves ready for this model, and people have set their office and now that that things have opened up in the city and around the province, then now what we're seeing is employers trying to figure out how to get people to come back to work. So there are folks that want to. In fact, I just had a meeting with a client yesterday, and the hiring manager said, "Yeah, Mondays and Fridays people can work from home. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays in the office." And then I said, "Okay." And I asked in the meeting, "Do you work from home Mondays and Fridays as well?" And he says, "No." And then as I left that meeting, I thought, hmm, I wonder if that's why he's the boss, or is because he's the guy who goes in every day, or is it that it just didn't work for him? But I'll tell you what, as a worker, if I saw that my boss was in the office every day, I would be inclined to go in every day as well. So even though they offer that, are you going to take them up on it? And then I'll add one more thing. I've got another client who they were working from home. Now they want everyone in the office, and there's a shortage of skills in this one particular area. And I was saying, like, we could find you someone if you would let them work from home, 100% work from home, no questions asked. And they came back and they were like, "We're not there, but I'll tell you what we will do is if you find us somebody not from Calgary who wants to work remotely and not relocate, they can work from home." So we changed our sourcing strategy to looking anywhere in Canada besides Calgary and offering work from home. So, which also seems so bizarre to me. Then what that tells me as a job seeker, if I was looking for those roles where I could work from home, maybe one of your strategies should be to target companies in other cities, that especially if you have a skill set that is in high demand. And high demand skill sets can be anything from senior technical roles that I work on, but it could be there's always a shortage of people to do any kind of customer service roles, uh, and those a lot of times are on the phone. So if you're targeting companies right here in Calgary, chances are they're going to want you to come into their call center. But going, I wonder what call centers they have in Edmonton, or because they will be much more flexible.
That seems to me to be crazy thinking on the part of an employer, that it's okay if you don't live in the city to work from home, but if you live in the city, you can't. I don't understand the logic behind that because, anyway, another discussion. Would anybody else like to jump in on that with your experiences or knowledge? Lindsay, are you hiring anybody from who are working from home?
We were at one point, given the nature of the current business. So I actually work in hospitality, so hotels. Little bit tricky to work from home when, for example, you're a hotel general manager. But what we do offer are days, a few days of the month to work from home to do like self learning. So instead of sitting in the hotel where you're going to be interrupted constantly, it's being able to take the work laptop home, find a course that you'd like to take online, and do that. So the work from home little portion there is tricky for sure when it comes to our hotel roles. Upper management, our head office is based in Halifax. I'm based in Calgary. Debbie, I love what you said because I found this company and went, a lot of their hotels are actually out west. Do they want an HR person in the office, or would they be okay with someone in Calgary? And sure enough, I got a work from home position because of that. A little bit of travel in there, of course, but yeah, work from home is something. Never be afraid to ask for it, but I wouldn't ever, maybe if they say no, we're work from the office, I wouldn't jump in and be like, well, no, I want to work from home full time. Negotiate that. That's all about negotiating when you're talking. It'd be the same thing as negotiating a salary. So keeping in mind, maybe a Monday, Friday work from home, come in Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, also a massive way to network. Very, very challenging to network when you work from home full time. If you have to take the bus downtown, you train downtown, you're going for lunch downtown to go into an office, you're now expanding that network. And networking isn't something that you ever stop doing. So don't find your job and stop networking, but there's the perk of working from an office as well.
Thank you. That's a good point. Any other input? Anyone else want to have a say? Okay. So, how about I just read an article this morning as I was waiting that this gentleman had interviewed over 35,000 candidates and he only received thank you notes from about 20% of the individuals. And he feels that thank you notes are a very great way for you to stand out, perhaps show a little bit of personality, and it might take you 5 or 10 minutes. I mean, for me, it takes me longer because I'm not a great writer, but in general. So, my question is, are thank you notes kind of old fashioned? Is that something that our job seekers need to think about? And I see Lindsay's shaking her head. So, Lindsay.
I want to jump in on this so badly. Yeah, thank you. I love thank you notes, and I find that it's a fantastic opportunity to actually keep the conversation going because it's not about just saying, hey, thanks for your time, have a good weekend. It's, we discussed this today, and I actually had a couple of questions that I forgot to ask during the interview, A, B, C, D, or something that I wanted to mention about myself that a specific question wasn't asked, and listing that. So it's not even about like, thanks and your name pops up again. It's provoking that follow up as well, which makes you stand out even more. They are my favorite. I love them more than cover letters. Oh, Lynn, I think you're still on mute.
I am. Does anyone else does anyone else have an opinion? Thank you notes. Personally, I always think that, if you get a thank you note, it shows someone's taken the time, and it also shows that they have manners. And I want to work with people that are polite or part of a team. And I think that just writing that note shows other personality traits. Okay, so We have a question. Thank you, whoever wrote this. I'm looking to go into the consulting field for project management. Are there any tips for starting out? So, this is a great question for almost any field. How does one start out if they want to be entrepreneurs and start their own consulting firms or jobs? I'm not going to say names.
I can speak to this, Lynn. Um, it's so difficult when you go out on your own, because the first step you want to do is make a list of the companies that are going to do work with you. And what is so interesting is that when I started out on my own, I had that list. I knew pretty much who would do work with me and support me through this, because there had been people in my life that had said, you should go out on your own. So I just would assume that they would use me. And I'll tell you what, not one person that would be on that list was actually who my clients ended up being. Not one. And in fact, I'm going to throw him under the bus, but my old boss from Suncor, and he took me over to Devon. I won't use his name. He was also the best man in my wedding. He's never given me a lick of business, not once. So I think that it's difficult when his name's Jackson, but but you would think that when you go out on your own that it would be quite easy. That would be step one. You'd be able to figure that piece out. I will never ever forget the first person who gave me a search. And it was actually somebody that I had worked with indirectly at a company with. And she was the one who gave me my break. So I think it's really difficult when you're going out to be a project manager and on your own. But what I would suggest is to start thinking about, like, project management can mean so many things in so many industries. And so the first step would be to go, okay, what industry am I going to be focused in on? Because you want to do a targeted approach. And then going, who are some of the companies? Because when you're talking about being a consultant on your own, was it a consultant, Lynn, that this person wanted to be? Yeah, a
Yes.
consultant. Okay, so you can partner with a lot of companies that have contracts in place with a lot of the players, and you have to go in that way. They don't, the larger companies anyways, don't typically hire independent on their own. So going and saying, some of the big names that I think of out there is like Agilis is one. I used to do a lot of recruiting with Bowen, and they bought Bowen, and I know they brought a lot of other companies. But going, okay, which companies are the supplier of the consultants to that company? And once you're able to get that list down of which third party firm is connected with them, that's probably the easiest way in.
That certainly has been my experience with lots of my friends that do consulting. They don't actually do their own, they actually do it on behalf of a company. So whether they are writers and so they're working for CNRL, as a consultant, they're not employees. And lots of larger companies now don't hire employees. They actually do hire project people to work on projects. At least that's my understanding. Does anyone else have anything to add?
Sure, I can speak to that a little bit as a consulting project manager. Uh, I mean, actually, my experience with previous employers was a little bit different than Debbie's, because in fact, when I moved from being an employee into a consulting role, my previous employer was my first client. But I do know that that can be, that is different for different people. I mean, I think some of the things we're talking about in terms of job search and networking and understanding the value you're bringing to a client, a lot of those things are the same, whether you're trying to, find that first project or that first contract versus, first job. When you're talking about projects, or you want to consult as a project manager, you have to remember what a project is. It has a beginning, it has an end, and you're providing value in terms of making sure that project's done on time, on budget, to a certain quality. And so, you have to start thinking about um, what kind of work within an industry. And I agree with Debbie, you got to kind of figure out where's your industry specialty, because I do believe you have to have some technical expertise to manage projects in certain, within a certain industry. But what kind of work is being done as a project? Because ongoing operations, that's not going to be a great fit. Where are there projects going on that have a beginning and end, where you can provide value in terms of going into a company and getting this done for them? There's also, talking about, coming in at, or collaborating with other consultants so that you can maybe take on bigger projects. I would recommend, looking into, there's some short-term projects about writing proposals for RFPs and that kind of stuff, because that's you're going to have to, through that networking process, you're usually going to have to follow up with a little bit of a proposal or a project concept. How would you do this? What's your value? So it's, there's a lot of similarities with job search, but then some differences to kind of make that transition from looking for a job to looking for that consulting or project assignment. So yeah, just
Okay.
kind of 2 cents.
Yeah. So we have a question who's just asking for clarification about what's the difference between a consultant, a specialist, an expert. The person who wrote it is in the communication field. And I know I have friends that are in the communication field in terms of they do write, they're writers. So depending on what they get hired to do, they have projects with different organizations. Um, so how would you clarify a consultant and a specialist and an expert? Does anyone have any opinion on that?
I guess, I think you can be a specialist or an expert that offers your specialization or expertise as a consultant. I guess I think of consultant as, an independent business, whether you're a sole proprietor or whether you're incorporated. And so, um, so to me, it's partially about the structure in which you work in. Are
Mm,
you running your own consulting business, even if you're, you know, only yourself, or you're working with others, where you have a business structure around
right.
you know your employment situation, whereas you could be a specialist or an expert and hired into a company to offer that specialization or expertise. I think if you're truly a consultant running your own business, um, the technical expertise or specialization that you offer is just part of what you have to do as a consultant. Your marketing, your bookkeeping, taking care of the financials. There's all that piece related to, running your business. Do you have a GST number? Do you have all those kinds of things that are associated with what I would call an independent consultant versus, somebody who would be offering their services or their specialization as an employee in a company. Not sure if
Okay.
that's answering the question or
Okay.
not,
No,
but
no. Yep. I think that that is great.
I would
Um,
like to add to
yep.
Elaine that I think that it's just like any organization where they have different names to call the same job. So when it's confusing for job seekers to be going, well, I am a specialist, and then another company is advertising for an expert or a consultant, and they're like, well, I'm actually a specialist. But you have to be open to going in and looking and seeing if they define what that looks like for that organization. So I think it just depends on who you're talking to and who's doing the hiring as to what they call different roles, but they will all switch it up.
Thank you. It's true. It's all about words. Iloko, you offer Momentum offers an employment program or an entrepreneurship program. Is there any advice that you are able to share around being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, thank you. I think entrepreneurship is an exciting opportunity for your own economic prosperity, and especially often people have great passion in some area that you wanted to capitalize. And but I really recommend do your research and to become an independent and entrepreneur, really looking at the business planning, cash flow, marketing, and then network where you're going to put your name around. And there is a lot of workshops available. And then ensure, like I do also like I work with the entrepreneurs in terms of their personal finance and stuff too. So make sure do your research a lot and have a strong business plan for your work. And how are you going to sort of manage your cash flow, business, and also your personal finance as well. And like our organization, for example, offer to Calgarians who wanted to open a businesses anything from business feasibility. Is that really tangible for you to open a business or where you are at? And also like a part-time business self-employment program, which uh, sort of like goal to launch business at the end of the program could be a 6 months or whatever that might be. So but at the end of the day also you wanted to have a look at your asset, how your livelihood is sort of established now, and then how you wanted to uh, carry forward as being employed is different from you have launched your business. Employment insurance, taxation. So you wanted to have a look at the accounting. And so little bit of things are all part of launching your business or freelancing as well. So I recommend you to really connect with the people who already launched the business and how they do business like a kind of management, and also like take some workshops and connect with best business bureaus, for example. That is an amazing resource. So that's kind of my 2 cents.
Thank you. I happen to be a contractor and consultant, so it suits my lifestyle, but I know it doesn't suit everyone. So thank you. Lindsay, maybe I could share this next question with you and you could give us some feedback. So the person's saying, if you take a gig job, example in retail, do you include that on your resume if you're an industry professional? So she goes out, or he, I wonder if you accept a 20-hour job, can you then ask for 50 hours, $50 an hour just once your dream job shows up? So how do you view that?
Sure. And I think that happened a lot, especially during pandemic when certain industries shut completely down and others absolutely didn't. For example, retail. And I actually come from that retail background as well. So we were seeing a lot of people in completely different industries who truly just needed a job to put food on the table. And that's absolutely valiant. Um, my recommendation is keep your resume very specific to what the job is you're applying to. You will be asked generally why there's a gap in your resume, maybe just adding what that bit was while you were in there, but don't get into details about what your specific duties were unless they pertain directly to what that position is looking for, if that makes sense. So if you worked in retail for a couple months because you just couldn't find that job and you need to put food on the table, super. Put, worked at company X, dates, leave it alone. Put all of your relevant job experience with far more detail, because that's what's going to be paid much more attention to. But then you lack that gap in the resume that someone's going to ask questions about.
Oh, thank you. Would anyone else like to jump in?
I'd like to share a story, Lynn.
Sure.
It's of a guy that I know that I worked with, and he was laid off, and he took a job it stocking shelves at the night shift, and he put it on his LinkedIn account that he was a night what do you call those, like stocking shelves at night. And what somebody in his network saw that and was like, what, why would he be doing that? Reached out, and he was like, yeah, I need to work. And he was like, well, we're looking for people, so come work here. And so it was a very short lived for him, but that's how quickly it worked. I'm not saying that always works, but I do know that that's how it worked for him. And I also do want to say that if we're looking, like I do everything from trades to senior technical roles. But if we're looking, for instance, in a central Alberta for an electrician or a welder, and I come across someone's profile, like whether or not if they are have that experience that I'm looking for, and they haven't even updated their resume in a couple years, I'll still reach out to see what they're doing, if they're interested in going back, why they left the industry for a while, that kind of stuff. So I think it really depends too on your skill set and your background about how well recepted it was. But I've never heard anybody be judged the other way and say they wouldn't accept somebody because they were doing a different job to pay their bills. Never.
I think in response to all of that, that there has been this reality, and especially in Calgary, where we've had these, cycles of people are fully employed and then people laid off, and then they get employed and then they get laid off. So I don't know that it would be truly unusual compared to maybe other places in Canada that doesn't have that economic cycle that we go through. Okay, so someone said most of my contracts include signing a NDA. How do you answer interview questions about the project when you've actually signed one and you're not supposed to speak about the project? Anyone have advice?
I can talk about this too. I just had this happen this week again, where I had a candidate in interviewing, and they were asking him questions, and he would not talk at all about the projects. And the thing that people have to remember is that employers understand that you cannot disclose like specifics, like the specific name, and but you can talk in generalities. So, for instance, if you're talking about a electrical project, you can talk about what the size of the projects to give them an idea of what you've worked in. You can't give the specific name of the project, and some projects, especially if it went sideways, you wouldn't want to do that.
Right.
You want to talk in generalities. So saying, oh, I've worked on projects anywhere from this size to this size. Or if I've worked on projects in this area to this area. So you can be very general about it, but still sharing the information. Because if you come across as, well, I signed an NDA or whatever it's called, I can't disclose any of that. That turns the employers off. So you want to still be engaging with them, and just at a high level, that's all they're looking for, to see what your expertise is.
Yeah, that was my thought too, Debbie, is they probably care less about the project and more about the experience and expertise you're bringing to the table for that project, without talking specifically about the project. And what problem are you solving? Because again, most employers are looking to, if it's a contract situation, they're trying to figure out what value is this person bringing to the table. And so really focusing on, you as a person and what you bring versus the project. And sometimes it's easier for us to talk about the project than it is to talk about ourselves personally and the value we bring. And I think, the fact that you're demonstrating that you respect that NDA, I think, says something about you too, in turn to an employer, about the fact that you are respecting and staying true to that, non-disclosure agreement, even if it means, you may not be able to answer questions as fulsomely as you would like, but that speaks to the fact that you're trustworthy and you're standing behind signing that agreement as well.
Thank you. So I'm hearing generalities, not specifics. So you can talk about what you did, but you can't talk about who you did it for, and, and that. Excellent. I have a question about grants available for women over 50 to go back to school. And I don't know whether or not Momentum has anything that they offer. Is there anything, or does anyone know of any funding for people to return to school?
I mean, I would just, like Momentum, there's lots of different funded programs that you can attend for free. They aren't, they may not be going back to school for a diploma or a degree, but, I think that they're very worthwhile. And so to really, again, do some research. Do you need to go back and do a degree or a diploma? Or do some of those government funded programs give you the foot in the door that you're looking for? And even some of it, are, entry level trades programs, tech programs. Like, there's just such a variety out there that that might be worth checking into. And I'll let Hiroko speak more on this, I'm sure.
Yeah, so our organization in Calgary, so a Calgarian who living on low income can come to Momentum and like all welcome, and then see what we can offer. So our trades program is offered to women as well. And also our match savings program, 6 months program and 12 months program. Those people who eligible for this program can save their money and receive matched funds from us for their further education. So we look at the education, it's an asset. So skills and knowledge is an asset, and stay with us, and that will sort of move us forward. So yeah, please contact us and see what we can offer here.
Um, this individual, she is a woman over 50. And so I think she's probably thinking, oh, I have limits on what I can do because I can't do trades, might not be interested in technology. But I feel like one of the places we can share is the Alberta government has a training directory where they do list down all of the funded programs, and so perhaps you might be able to um, go through that and see, or even work with a career coach. And sometimes the institutions themselves have grants that you apply to the institution for a certain program, and they might have grants that can be covered. So I think that's great advice. Go to Momentum, look and see what's available for the free government training programs. It is tough for us individuals that are perhaps on the little bit of the older age. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but I know it's true. So get out there and find all of those places that the government funds. Okay.
Lynn,
So, and
can I
yeah.
add too? There was, I don't know if it's still there, but LNG Canada, they were hiring operators for their plant. Now, it was in a remote location, but they
Oh,
offered free training for women specifically. So, and then there was also, I've seen out there a ton looking for truck drivers. So I think it goes back to exactly what you said, though, about, it's going to depend on where you're at and where your passion is, and thinking about, like, what is it that I really want to do for, the next 15 years of my work life, and figuring out what that looks like for you, because we can come up with all these programs, but if it doesn't resonate with you, it doesn't make much sense. So it is a going back again to what we keep hinting on, is research, 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 and doing
mhm,
those Google's research, and talking to people about what it is that they do, and going, okay, that's where I see myself.
yes.
Now, how do I get from where I'm at to over there?
Great advice. Great advice. Someone would like clarification about low income. What is considered low income?
Yeah, so Momentum uses at the moment low income cutoff. So if you can Google it, and you will be able to see it. So that's one measure that we uses for eligibility.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so thank you. We've got lots of great questions coming in. Um, now, I'm going to just go through them as we kind of receive them. What should a job seeker do if they apply for a job posting, they don't get called for an interview, but they feel like they're qualified? Um, the posting comes down and then it's reposted. So, Lindsay, I'm going to ask you first. Do they reapply? Do they have to change their resume somehow to make them seem like a better fit? What is your advice?
Absolutely. And I would say don't ever take a hint, especially if you didn't hear anything in that regard. With online job, like, or applicant collections, employers are overrun with these sorts of things. Like, you're looking at one job getting, anywhere between 30 and 300 applicants. It gets huge. So come at it in a different way. Spice up your resume a little bit. And remember that technology is also used very, very frequently. Taking keywords right out of a job posting and adding them to your resume in a relevant manner, obviously, um, sparks that as well, because people are using that technological assist to, like, find those word matches as well. If you can find out who the employment, who's doing the recruiting, connecting with them on LinkedIn, sending a quick message, hey, and notice this went back up, I'm very interested, dropping off a resume in person. People don't do that as often as you think anymore. They do rely on that online. And I know a lot of times the answer is we'll just go apply online and just be like, you know what, I'm just going to leave this here anyway. I appreciate it. I will absolutely do that as well. Make sure your name is big and bold on that envelope or on that resume. Lots of different ways to kind of stand out, but don't ever take a hint. Try again, get the feedback if possible. and keep trying, especially if it's something that you're passionate about and a job that you feel like you'd be a great fit for.
I'm going to build on something you said, if I may. Because there was another recruiter, career development person who gave the suggestion that you find out who the hiring manager is, and that takes research. Boy, we're using that R word a lot, but you find out who it is. You make sure your resume is very targeted to the position. You write a cover letter explaining why you want to work for the company and what you have to offer. So that first part is important. How do you fit with the company? And then you put it in a brown envelope, um, handwrite the name of the company and the person and write on it private, and then drop it off as if you were a courier. So you don't talk to the person at the front, drop it off. That way, you are pretty well assured that the hiring manager will actually open the envelope, read your cover letter, read your resume as a way to make sure at least you're in front of them. They might not get in touch with you, but you still want to go through the online system, but at least you know that the person has read your resume and understands why you want to work for the company. And I thought that's a brilliant idea. It doesn't cost very much, and yet you kind of stand out. Any other suggestions?
Something I want to add to it as well, though, in the event that you are contacted again, also kind of important to ask maybe why that position was reposted as well. Like, hey, I applied the first time, sorry I didn't get it, but I'm curious to know why this has now been reposted a couple weeks or months later. It might give you a lot of insight as to the company itself. Maybe they just made a bad fit hire, but make sure that you do be curious about that too, because you don't want to be in that same situation where in a couple months, you're out looking for work again.
Okay, thank you.
Lynn, can I
Um,
tell a
yeah,
story
of
about
course.
how this happened to me? So we had posted a job, and this is when I worked at Devon, and somebody had applied. I wasn't working the role, and they didn't get a call on the role. And the lady was at a party, and she's explaining to someone at the party that she didn't get a call on this position. She was perfect for the role and could not make sense why she didn't get a call. And the person at the party happened to know me and said, call Debbie and ask her to look it up for you. So she says, okay. And she calls me. I was like, yeah, I'll look it up. And I went in and looked, and I could see that the recruiter had seen her background, but kicked her out. And so I went and looked at her background, and I knew exactly why he didn't consider her. And the reason he hadn't considered her, because he didn't recognize the name of the company that she had worked at previously. So we typically hired from like a pool of our competitors. And so because I knew he hadn't recognized that, I knew that that's why he had kicked her out of the rec. So what we did was he was going on holidays the following week. And so I said to her, like, I can't step on his toes right now, but when he goes on holidays, it's fair game. I can help you out. So we waited till the following week. I went to the hiring manager, gave the resume and said, what do you think of this lady? And the hiring manager looks and goes, oh my God, she's perfect. And hired her, and she's the one who got the job. So
Wow.
that again goes to tell you the importance of being able to speak to somebody when this happens. Like if I see a job going up and I didn't get looked at it for the first time, I'm also going to suggest, there's that saying, doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results is the definition of insanity. So you don't drive yourself crazy. Instead, go, okay, that approach didn't work last time. I'm going to do something different this time. And I'm going to try and get someone to talk to me about why I wasn't considered. So maybe they're looking for someone specifically from one of their 5 companies. You just don't know until you have those conversations.
Good point. I wonder also whether it would make a difference if you do have an employer who is not that well known by putting a short little explanation of what they do or the size or maybe even some of their clients right under the name of the company so that there's some context there.
That is such
Certainly,
good advice. When I was at Suncor, if somebody had on their resume that they had worked, their company did work for Suncor, I'm telling you, you got your resume passed on. The learning curve is a lot less, right? If you're familiar already with our assets or the area we're operating in, whatever that looks like. So we would definitely give those people a shot. So, especially if you're applying to jobs at those companies, make sure those names are on there for sure.
good point. So Lindsay mentioned, not someone, Lindsay did, mentioned about the applicant tracking system. There is a myth out there that a person won't look at your resume unless the applicant tracking system actually highlights your resume and kind of puts it at the top of the pile. Um, I understand that that is not true. But you still have to write your resume for the human eye, which is similar to the applicant tracking system in terms of keywords. Now I'm the one answering the question. Lindsay, um, do you use an applicant tracking system? And if so, what does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely do use an applicant tracking system. We do use a keyword search as well. It just helps like scan through when we have someone who comes through with, the better part of 300 resumes in the course of a couple of weeks. So pulling up those keywords, it's not that the system does it for us, it's that we opt to do that, to pull some to the forefront. We do our absolute best, obviously, to scan through, but keeping in mind, Lynn, to your point, it is generally a human being going through every single one of those resumes, not a computer pulling some to the top, in my experience so far. And group here, like, please feel free to add on to this. But so if you can make your resume stand out in any way, shape, or form, it makes a big difference. But throwing keywords and making sure that you're not just throwing around the same resume to every single job that you apply for is hugely, hugely important as well.
Good point. Targeting. You want the employer to know that you want their job. You're not just looking for any job. So that taking that extra time to make sure that you are shown, otherwise you're just wasting your time. When people say to me, "Oh, I sent off, 200 resumes." I think, how much time did you take to do that compared to maybe sending 20 that actually were written specifically for that employer? Maybe you'd have a better result. Oh, that's what I do. Okay, salary. Oh, we hate the salary question. So some application forms want to know what's your desired salary. When I do some research, I find salaries that seem all over the map. In one case, it was just for Bank of Canada's with no specific position. Do you have any advice on how to handle that question? Oh, I hate salary questions. Okay. Who would like to jump in? Don't tell me I have to answer it because I don't want to. Lindsay.
I loved what Hiroku said earlier about your self-worth, making sure that you know what you are worth in your position. Look at your education, look at your experience. And if you have that big, long, like, 50K a year to 300K a year, making sure that it's a realistic ask based on what your experience is, and be able to back that up through experience and education, because that is essentially what the resume, or pardon me, what your interview is for. If someone comes at this position and is asking for far too much or far too little, they're either going to assume overqualified or have no idea what they're talking about, or underqualified and just not ready for a position of this magnitude. So making sure that you go through what that position is, There's generally a pretty solid job description, I think, in job postings. I think we're getting better. And making sure that you can check those boxes. And if there's some that you can't, that's okay too. But then taking additional bits that you could add and putting yourself on that wage scale. There is no mathematical calculation to this, but making sure that you're using as many resources as possible. Glassdoor, Indeed, I think they're actually owned by the same company now, but they have a lot of that insight and information on position and salary expectation help with that as well.
Thank you.
I was just going to add, a lot of the groups that I work with are those that are maybe looking to transition a little bit into a new career or a new role. And so, I totally agree. What's your value? What do you need from a salary perspective? But also, what else are you getting from this company, especially if you're trying to make a pivot into a different industry? Because perhaps, what are you willing to um, take for a salary if you're also getting career development opportunities? Maybe there's a work-life balance there that's different than, or that meets your needs. It's companies that, your values align in terms of the work and that kind of stuff. So, I think that doing that assessment from that broader perspective than just what's coming into the bank at the end of the day, and being able to speak to that with the employer as well, saying, this is, the salary, and this is what else I'm hoping to get from this position, so that, it provides that more holistic view about work and what it means for you.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in and build on that as well. And again, like a research on industry standard. And Alice is a amazing like a kind of website, just to get the sense of the range of the sort of salary range, and also like what the industry offer right now. And also, Lindsay, I'm really like what you said, and also Pat as well. Really kind of show true to, true sort of picture of yourself, education, qualification, and what you've done in the past. It really kind of shows. And then employer, like I'm also hiring throughout the year as
Yep.
well. And then we can kind of gauge. I think an interviewer can gauge this person in this industry, how many years in the industry, potentially this person will make this much money. If you say too low, or too high, and that's also kind of like a question as well. Why this person have this much, big, sort of like amazing experiences and expertise in education, and why asking so low? But also like it kind of adds some like a negotiable, and then passion about this job, why you applying this job. And sometimes person have seems to be overqualified, but is really passionate about this industry, especially we are nonprofit.
Yep.
So we do seek kind of value alignment and what they're looking for, what we are, how align with how we wanted to achieve this, like kind of overarching goal as an organization. And sometimes it's like, salary might be like a kind of second aspect of all of the hiring experience as well. And definitely, like I love people are upfront about it and open and honest. And then so as we are honest, and then this is what we can do. And then that's also a negotiation. I think I really like that kind of persona who being able to open to discussion, open to negotiation, what we can do. And sometimes it's an unfortunate situation. However, this is your career, and then you will put your heart into that work, and you don't want to be there for only 2 months, wanted
Right.
to have a kind of more meaningful opportunities. That's what I'm seeing lately more than ever before.
Right.
So I just to kind of ask yourself why this is the job that you want, and how much you can negotiate.
Mm, thank you. Very, very good advice. And just a reminder that salary is only one piece of compensation. You know, there's other pieces of compensation, whether it be, say, medical or vacation, or I remember my son who is the master of negotiation, I have to say. Even when he was a little person, he was a negotiator. Um, you know, he always gets what he wants when he moves to a new job, and mainly because he can articulate what he's going to do for the employer. He usually lists down the skills, and if they can't give him the money he wants, then he can negotiate vacation time or some other thing. But it's always about knowing what you're going to bring to the employer. That's my thought. That if you can't tell the employer why they need to hire you, what you're going to do for them, what problems you're going to solve, or what skills you're going to bring, then the employer is not going to take the time needed to try to figure that all out. Okay, so another two questions around this about what if I see several jobs for the same company? How do I apply for them? Do I target my resume for each position? Do they think, oh, this person's just looking for a job rather than being specific? But if I can do, if I feel I can do the different jobs. What's your advice for that?
I don't think you can actually, for a lot of ATSs, you can't have more than one cover letter and one resume. So unless you're going to set up multiple profiles, that makes it very difficult. So knowing that if you go, no, I just want to have the one profile, you're going to have to make sure that the jobs are very similar. But the other thing I've seen, when we've got a couple of roles with one client and they're very similar. We have one right now that we're doing, and one of the hiring managers just lined up a couple of interviews and said if they're both good, we can move this guy over here. So they're also doing the behind the scenes stuff too to shuffle candidates around. But I do think it makes it difficult to apply for more than one role at a time. It's not impossible, but it does make it. And the other thing is on a lot of ATSs, the first thing the recruiter has to do is scroll through all the jobs that you've applied for. And so if you've been all over the place and you're doing a more targeted approach now, you might actually go, okay, I'm going to redo my profiles. I'm going to set up a new job search email and set up new profiles and start over to clean it up, because you can't get in their system to do it. They will always see that. And the other thing is that you have those biases that if I know the recruiters, if they see that you've applied for 50 jobs and nobody scooped you up, they go, well, like, what are the odds I'm going to want this person, right? So they probably don't even open it up and look any further. So yeah, if you've been out there just blasting your resume and applying for every job in hopes of getting a job, and you go, okay, I'm going to do things a little different now, I would get a new email, start over, get a new profile up, and do that more targeted, focused approach.
Great advice. Okay. Okay. I see it's almost 10:30, so I do want to ask a question around, and maybe, Hiloko, this might start with you. What can job seekers do to help, I want to say, maintain their mental health when they are looking for work? Because as everyone who's listening to this or watching this knows, looking for work is so difficult, and it can really bruise our egos, but it can also cause a lot of problems. So, any advice?
Yeah, uh, job seeking is a full-time job itself, and mental health, like a mental strength, it is absolutely needed. And interview, you have to be show up the best of the best. So I advise that know yourself. Again, like what is your strengths? Who is your connections, support network, and also like kind of what's your outlet, um, what sort of a stress management. That's also a great topic, stress management, and how you kind of control yourself and connect with people. This is not alone. And connect with the employment agencies here in Calgary. Community has lots of agencies. Do some volunteer. Connect with the people and then volunteer is amazing opportunities to just to be out yourself there. Not just to grouping up in a little room and then just sending resume every single day. Sometimes step away from what you're doing is just to give you a different look, different world view. And also like a years open. Again, just connecting with the different groups, start doing sort of a hobby and put yourself out there and then just to not doing only one things, and mental health is absolutely number one priority for everyone.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any tips or advice?
I'd like to share something that a career counselor that we've worked with, collaborated with in the past. One piece of advice that she always gave, and she called it "eat the frog first." So, what's that thing that you dislike doing the most related to job search? Is it tailoring my resume? Is it, that thing that takes, the most out of you, but probably the thing you want to procrastinate on the
Yes.
most. And so her advice was eat that frog first, you know, do it when you're kind of freshest, when you're, maybe after a good night's sleep, whatever, tackle that. And then you don't get caught up in this cycle of procrastinating on that thing that really needs to be done, is probably high priority, but not something you particularly like doing. So I like that one. Eat the
Mm,
frog first.
that's quite the visual.
I know.
Thank you. And it's true because also then you have a sense of accomplishment and then you can move forward in a more positive manner. Anyone else? Okay. Okay. So my last question for each of you is, how do you feel about the economy right now? How do you feel about the outlook? Um, what is it that job seekers should be looking for? Um, I'm just going to leave this as an open-ended question. S-
I'll kick us off here.
Thank you,
I
Lindsay.
guess again, so I work in hospitality. Like I said, we have everything from skilled to unskilled kind of positions. You are going to see right now that the market is absolutely flooded with people needs. There is a shortage of people across the board, but not necessarily for the jobs that skilled professionals are looking for. Don't forget that even that like part-time job while you're looking for work can also be considered that networking. The moment you think that a position is below you, things get very touchy and then your job hunt becomes a little bit harder. Um, but yeah, not being afraid to be like, you know what? I love hotels. Maybe they've got some cool perks in there. Like,
Yeah.
do I get a night free with my family or something? Like, just digging into that to help link your mental health until that dream job does come along. A lot of different options for that, but it is a huge market out there for jobs, but they are also being flooded with individuals as well. So still, even if you're looking for that job that isn't necessarily your career path, that you're tailoring resumes and such appropriately to be able to stand out? That's a big
Thank you.
question.
It is a big question.
I can speak about the like what do I feel about this next year is is that I think it's an exciting year. We're seeing the world open up, and there's more and more positions out there. But the expectations of the companies and hiring managers is at a new all-time high. And we're seeing candidates with multiple competing offers, so it's very competitive. That's the one side of it. But then, just yesterday when I was talking to someone from a company, they mentioned that their company is they're pretty sure they're headed into receivership on Friday, and there'll be over 100 people let go in one location alone. So you're seeing, especially in the, we're seeing it in Calgary with a lot of the restaurants and bars, the people that took those loans to help get them through COVID, unable to pay them back. They're due this year. So there's also the flip side of it. So making sure to know that your company is secure, and if you start thinking you're not that sure about it, to make sure to start being proactive, getting your resume done, and so that if it did happen to you, that you're ahead of the curve. I do want to just add one more thing. If we're talking about what a small world it is, I'm going to surprise you, Lindsay. I don't think you know this, but I'm actually one of your recruiters. Did you know this? No, because my firm's known to hire to fill roles that people can't. And Holloway, actually, they didn't hire me directly. They hired another firm, and they used me. But I filled in 2021. I filled your director of land development. Yeah, no kidding. Small world. Anyways,
That
I'll
is
leave
a
you with
small
that.
world.
And that just shows why networking. I used to always say to my kids, don't ever make people mad, because you never know when they're going to come back into your lives, and you have to be nice to them again. Okay. Next.
I would just, I would echo, most of my work is in the, in the energy sector. We've certainly, talk about a, 180 from where we were, even a couple of years ago, with more positions, more difficult. And in a lot of ways, what's happened in the energy sector, I would say more on the energy services side of things, some of the field roles, that kind of stuff, is people just found jobs elsewhere when the energy industry was in real trouble. So there's certain sectors within the energy sector that are really challenged to find people. And so I think it was, Lindsay saying that sometimes the roles available aren't necessarily the best match or perceived to be the best match for some of the talent that's available. So, but yes, more optimistic about the jobs that are going to be available or are available. I think a couple of other things that I find interesting in terms of what I see happening in the marketplace. On the recruiter side of things, there's more companies, more recruiters, or I would say at least the companies and recruiters that I have contact with, that are getting way better at looking for transferable skills, being more open to, looking at candidates that maybe are coming at the job a little bit differently. I mean, obviously there's roles that, the occupations are regulated and you need to have certain qualifications to fulfill that role. But then there's a lot of other roles where recruiters are becoming more adept. I don't want to generalize, because I know I'm probably working with, a small portion of recruiters becoming more adept at looking at transferable skills and that kind of stuff. And so but it means the job seeker has to be able to talk about their transferable skills and how what they bring to the table fits with what an employer's looking at. And then the other thing, like Debbie was saying, and I think there is going to continue to be a dynamic labor market. The other trend that I see that I think is really positive is as we're sort of making, we talk about energy transition, we talk about digitization and transformation as sort of the labor market is is shifting. There's a lot more what are called micro credentials or boot camps or small, shorter training that's happening out there to help people really kind of stay proactive, to stay resilient in their career, in their industry, in their occupation. And they tend to be shorter term, they tend to be affordable, if not free in some cases. And so I really encourage people to, sort of look into where's my occupation going? Where's my industry going? And what can I do proactively to stay resilient so that I don't necessarily caught up in, what the next cycle looks like, or I can be prepared to go elsewhere if I need to, as opposed to scrambling when that layoff or that, something else happens.
Great advice. Great advice. Thank you. And last but not least,
Yeah. So I'm in a sort of industry where working with living on low incomes, and then it is a difficult time. And I think it's preparedness and plan for life is very important. And I'm just gonna drop the our links to our website, and there is a on-demand courses that are available if people wanted to kind of learn about money management. And like I know one of many people watching how this year turned out to be. And that ratio is like rising, and
mhm,
inflation it seems to be tapered, but it doesn't really um, you know uh, translate it to everyday life. Produce is still expensive. So when I suggest to people or kind of comment from us as to this economy is a big force, something that we can't control. But what you can control is your life. And kind of looking at the resources, what sort of resources available. This is a part of the resource as well. And even people are kind of shifting, accessing different community resources that are not accustomed to community, like accessing community resources, but it's available for everyone. So I really invite everyone to look up in Info Alberta, what sort of community resources available, checking out the employment program, support system, and just the knowledge is really help us moving forward when you really, really need. And also encourage people, even your job seeking difficult time, saving a little bit of money, and
right.
even like $5 a month or $10 a month, saving towards your goal. If you have a goal in your life, it really kind of give us a strength and a direction. And especially job seeking is a difficult time. I went through many times in the past. It's not gonna lie, it's a really, really tough
Mhm.
position to be. However, you yourself in a driver's seat of your life. So, like I mentioned in the very beginning, controlling your sort of your personal finance and be confident, and then know what's overall picture encountered after COVID hit right away. People are just scrambling. Oh my God, I don't know what my expenses are. This is a great time for you to know exactly what is your need, what is the absolutely essential items, what can I taper off, or what can I negotiate as an expenses? That's one way to control your
Mhm.
life. And then when it comes, employment and then kind of more steady incomes, then you can start up to kind of expand a little bit more. But in the meantime, you don't have to stop saving just even tiny bit,
Yeah.
and then not really kind of move you forward. And emergency, like lots of research about emergency funding, emergency, sorry, savings, even a couple $100 any given
Mhm.
time, you can use that for fixing your car,
Right.
lost the wallet. You don't have to stop your life. So I really encourage you to come to Momentum and talk to us, and then attend a workshop and connect with people.
Thank you. Thank you so much. What great advice, all of you. I really feel like what you've shared will benefit individuals. And so, for the job seekers out there, in the alert bar that you will see, there is a link to the Momentum website, and there is also there's going to be a link for the resource handout that Talent Pool has put together. So you will be able to access that. And I just want my last words are know that you're not alone in this. So, for those individuals that indicated on the question bar, I've sent out hundreds of resumes and I'm not getting any responses. The Alberta government pays organizations to provide you with career support. So the three that come to mind, and there's many more, but the three that come to mind is the Career Hub that's in the Northwest. You can Google that. Um, I want to say Prospect now. They are in the Northeast and they're also downtown. And then I want to say McBride, and they go by a different name. M. Oh, why do I not remember it? I'm having one of those.
MCG, MCG.
MCG.
Yes.
MCG. Thank
Yeah,
you.
we go
Thank you.
there as our partner too. They're a
Oh,
wonderful,
perfect.
wonderful agency.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Yes. So all of those 3 agencies, they are paid to provide career support for job seekers. And so they do one-on-one, they can do mock interviews, they have some of them have little webinars that can help you. So what we want you to do is make an action after this. Make an action. Do something after this. And it might be get in touch with one of these organizations, get in touch with Momentum, look at your resume. Does it need to be upgraded? Um, so, my last words of wisdom. I just want to say thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, panel, for sharing your wisdom, your knowledge, your time with us. It's been very, very informative. I want to thank the government of Alberta for sponsoring this and sharing and sponsoring all of the other resources that they offer. Um, to Brian, thank you for all of the technical magic that you do. And to Talent Pool, Chris and Brandon, thank you so much for your support and putting these events together. So, on that note, I hope everyone at least steps outside their door and just stand in the sun for a few minutes, even if you're knee deep in snow, and just enjoy that break, that change, because it does so much in terms of helping our mental health to kind of be outside and having a change. So, thank you, everybody. Enjoy your week and good luck.
Bye.